Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, June 13th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. It's been a very, very busy weekend. I taught my online class on Saturday, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And our guest speaker was Dr. David Imhotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. So we had a fantastic class. If you missed that class, you can still register for the online course. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll also post a link here as well. So we had a really good conversation with Dr. David Imhotep, and he talked about his new book, which will be out in 2 to 3 weeks, The First Americans Were Africans Revisited. All right, so on today's show, we're going to continue our conversation dealing with critical race theory, continue our conversation dealing with African-American farmers as well. Thursday, I think it was Thursday, this came out June 10th. Yeah, Thursday, June 10th. The Florida State Board of Education, passed a rule banning critical race theory from being taught in classrooms. Okay, now critical race theory is not taught in K through 12. And this is an attack once again on teaching real history and dealing with systemic racism and dealing with how laws and policies are used to oppress African Americans and non-white people. There's a concerted effort to fight against this. This is a concerted effort to there's an attack on the 1619 Project that we continue to see. So this took place in Florida. Several groups, including the State Teachers Union, opposed the rule change, saying it would do a greater disservice to students to cover up history. It would do a greater disservice to students to cover up history. You had teachers saying, "Let us teach the truth. Let us teach the truth." Allow teachers to teach the truth. That was the actual quote, allow teachers to teach the truth. So this took place in Florida, where you have Governor Ron DeSantis as governor. And then we know also Thursday night, a judge in Wisconsin put a pause on the $4 billion loan forgiveness program that was part of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. And this loan forgiveness program is for African-American farmers, is for farmers of color, non-white farmers, to address decades of discrimination and racism by the federal government and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, especially towards African-American farmers. Well, this loan forgiveness program has been paused because you have white farmers who were suing, saying that they're excluded from the program. They're crying racism. Imagine that. White farmers crying racism. Now, these white farmers were silent in 2020 when they got almost $26 billion from the Trump administration, okay, and COVID-19 relief aid. They got almost $26 billion. African-American farmers got 0.1% of 1%. They got $20.8 million. These white farmers that are crying discrimination now weren't saying discrimination back then. So we talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and I shared this on my Friday shows on Roland Martin Unfiltered, Friday, June 11th. I'm a panelist each Friday on the show. We're going to revisit that clip. We're going to share that again. There's also an article from the Washington Post that came out June 11th. It came out Friday, June 11th. That I'm going to reference as well. Judge halts billions in debt relief for farmers of color as conservative group for white farmers sue. Okay, they're suing the Biden administration. Okay, they're suing, claiming discrimination. Now, when they were getting all the benefits, okay, and when African American farmers were excluded for decades or being discriminated against for decades from aid from the federal government, these white farmers were silent. So we'll talk about that story. And then June 12th was the anniversary of the assassination of Medgar Evers, civil rights activist Medgar Evers. He was assassinated June 12, 1963, outside of his home, shot in the back by a white supremacist named Byron Della Beckwith. Okay, Byron Della Beckwith, who was a member of the White Citizens Council. We're going to talk some about Medgar Evers and his legacy. A lot of times when we talk about civil rights activists, and Mary Evers Williams, his widow, has said this. A lot of times when we talk about civil rights activists, Medgar Evers gets left out of that conversation. We'll talk about Dr. King. We'll talk about Malcolm X. We'll talk about Ralph Abernathy, Jesse Jackson, okay, Reverend C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, which we should. All the above we should, and Septima Clark and Rosa Parks and Fannie Lou Hamer. But when we had this conversation, oftentimes Medgar Evers gets left out of the conversation. We know Medgar Evers was only 37 years old when he was assassinated. He was the first field secretary in the South for the NAACP. He was organizing in Mississippi, especially Jackson, Mississippi, organizing for desegregation and registering African Americans to vote. So we'll talk some about the legacy of Medgar Evers also. And then we know Juneteenth is coming up. Juneteenth is Saturday, June 19th. So we'll deal with a little history dealing with Juneteenth. What is Juneteenth? And Juneteenth is Emancipation Day, not Independence Day. Because I see some people saying Juneteenth is our Independence Day. Okay, I can understand you saying that in July 4th, 1776, majority of African Americans, were enslaved. I can understand that, but Juneteenth is an Emancipation Day, but it's not Independence Day because we weren't independent. We were freed, but we were not given the tools that are needed to stay free. We were not given reparations. We were not given land in general. The majority of the 4 million former slaves were not given land. Yes, you had Special Field Order number 15, which is commonly known as 40 acres and a mule, but that would only apply to coastal land in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. That only applied to coastal land in South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. That was divided up by about 40,000 African American families. Okay, so the majority of us did not get land. All right, so we'll deal with some of the history of Juneteenth and what's behind it. And speaking of Juneteenth, I will be in Atlanta June 18th through the 20th for the 9th annual Juneteenth Festival. The 9th annual Juneteenth Festival is taking place at Centennial Park, Olympic Centennial Park. Visit JuneteenthATL.com for more information. JuneteenthATL.com for more information. Centennial Olympic Park. This is free, open to the public, good family event. So I'll be there all 3 days. I'll have a vendor booth. So come check me out at my vendor booth. And I'll be speaking on Saturday and Sunday in the amphitheater, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. both days, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. both days. Okay. So visit JuneteenthATL.com. Arrested Development is performing. I think Angie's performing this year as well. They have music. This is the Juneteenth Atlanta Parade and Music Festival. Okay. So it starts Friday, June 18th, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. The parade is on Saturday. Usually either I think it's at noon. The parade starts. Check the website for proper times. And parade starts at noon on Auburn Avenue. Okay. So come check this out. They usually have about 100 to 130 African American vendors and Caribbean vendors and African vendors. And African History Network will be there as well. All right. I have my DVD lectures there, etc. Okay. So we're going to deal with that on today's show. Now, in the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you want to support the African History Network, and you definitely need your support, because this helps me get to and from Atlanta. Even though I'm speaking there, I still have expenses to cover, so this definitely helps. You can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. So when you do it through Cash App, you've heard me say this before, you've seen me show the graphic recently. Be sure to type in $ the AHN Show, SHOW, unless you click on the link that I just posted here. And you see the graphic here on the screen. This is the official African History Network Cash App account. Our tag is $ the AHN Show, SHOW. And it shows my name there, Michael, shows my picture. These other two are fake African History Network Cash App accounts that I don't know who set these up. I already reported them to Cash App, but they've been stealing money from us. These are not mine. I don't know who did this. Trying to find out. But ours is $ the AHN Show, SHOW. So this is so you know, if you sent money to the fake African History Network Cash App accounts, you go through the app, click on problem with payment, go through the app, and you can let them know that you sent it to the wrong account and ask them to send the money back. Okay, and explain the situation, because I've had people, they've done that for them. That's how I found out that somebody set up these fake accounts. Somebody told me, hey, I sent money. Did you get it? I said, no, let me check. And then I go in, I said, where'd you send it? And they showed me. I'm like, that's not me. But anyway. All right. So I want to jump into this topic here dealing with critical race theory. Now, we've been talking about critical race theory here very frequently. And this ties into history. If you heard the show that I did Thursday, where we dealt with the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890 and how the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890 legalized poll taxes and literacy tests. Okay. And this is before the grandfather clause was instituted in 1898. This is before Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. And they actually said at the convention, the Mississippi State Convention. Now, there's a really good article from Washington Post on this called The Mississippi Plan to Keep Blacks from Voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro. We came here to exclude the Negro. If you didn't see our show from June 10th, 2021, go back and watch it. We have them archived here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. If you missed that show, go watch it. It's also an audio podcast format. We're on 9 different audio podcast platforms: iHeartRadio, Castbox, Acast, FM Player. But download the iHeartRadio app. Search for the African History Network show. They have about, I think, 300 of my podcasts there. And also search for 910 AM, the Superstation, WFDF in Detroit. Search for 910 AM, the Superstation in Detroit on iHeartRadio. You can listen to all of these shows live. Okay. All right. So I talked about this on our show Thursday, June 10th, the Mississippi Plan. And they actually said we came here to exclude the Negro. This was the convention president in Mississippi in 1890, when they're voting on the state constitution. The convention's president was Solomon Saladin Calhoun. He was a white county judge, and he put the voting issue bluntly. He said, quote, "Let's tell the truth. If it bursts the bottom of the universe." He said, "We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. We came here to exclude the Negro." So then they passed the Mississippi State Constitution that instituted poll taxes and literacy tests and put obstacles in the way of African Americans voting, obstacles in the way of the 15th Amendment of 1870. Delegates eventually adopted a literacy test and poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in a state with a black majority. The Mississippi Plan, as it was called, the Mississippi Plan became the model throughout the South, part of a raft of racially oppressive Jim Crow laws that ended Reconstruction. We know Reconstruction ends in 1877 with the Compromise of 1877. Well, what we see here today is we see laws being used to suppress correct history being taught in schools. We see laws being used to suppress correct history being taught in schools, and the people who are passing the laws are largely in general, grossly ignorant of history. And then by suppressing this history, not teaching the proper history in school, you are then controlling the trajectory of the future. Whoever controls the teaching of the past will control the trajectory of the future. And as Dr. Carol Anderson said on All In with Chris Hayes on, I think that was on last Thursday, June 10th, she said you have bad policies that are being passed based upon bad history. We're going to deal with all this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio, the oldest radio station in town. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a quick question or comment. So right before the break, I was talking about what's taking place what took place in Florida with the Florida Board of Education, the state board passing a policy banning critical race theory. Okay. And then, so I was talking during the break and people asking, and so Sharon asked this question, you're not getting paid to speak in Atlanta. No, I'm not getting paid to speak in Atlanta. Okay. I'm getting free, just so people understand. No, I'm not. I'm getting, they cover me on the booth. No, I'm not getting paid to speak in Atlanta. Okay. Those are my people, but I ain't, no. So, I don't know why people thought, okay, whatever. It is what it is, but there's a lot of stuff I do for free and I got to cover calls out of my pocket. So it's just a lot of things I don't talk about, but there's a lot of things I do for free. But anyway, so this took place in Florida. Now, Florida is like the 20th state to pass some type of laws, policies dealing with critical race theory and also attacking the 1619 Project. And as somebody who's a historian, I see these attacks coming a mile away. These are dangerous. We're going to go to clip one, Jalen. Florida, this is from abcnews.com. abcnews.com had a really good segment dealing with this. Florida bans critical race theory in public schools. Okay, let's go to this clip, Jalen.
A closer look at controversial academic movement. The critical race theory movement in the headlines as Florida becomes the latest state to ban schools from teaching about systemic racism. ABC's Zachary Keisha is here with more. Good morning to you, Zachary.
Eva, good morning to you as well. It's really a way of looking at the world. It's a lens that acknowledges the role that racism plays. But critics will argue because it's both complex and because it's been politicized, instead of being used as a way of re-examining or reframing the past, it's being used as a tool to accentuate a cultural divide. This morning, critical race theory, a term originally used to broaden how we think about the past, is being used by some to define the racial divide in our schools.
Critical race theory comes out of the legal field. It's been conceptualized over 40 years ago by scholars such as Kimberly Crenshaw, speaking specifically about how systemic racism works in the legal field.
These legal scholars argued individual intentions can't be proven, but as a framework, racism is baked into our social systems and psychology. That's the start of the conversation, they said. Last year, the New York Times 1619 Project placed the struggle of Black Americans at the center of our country's narrative. While the work gave a nod to those largely left out of the history books, it quickly became politicized. Critical race theory was the umbrella term.
This is a deliberate plan to politicize and whitewash history. Thank you, Mr. President. Stop it.
It is sad that we are even contemplating something like critical race theory, where children will be separated by their skin color and deemed permanently oppressors or oppressed in 2021.
On Thursday, the Florida Board of Education banned critical race theory in its schools.
I think it'll cause people to think of themselves more as a member of a particular race or based on skin color rather than based on the content of their character.
There's no national mandate saying this curriculum...
Hey, Jalen, pause it right there for a minute. Pause it right there, Jalen. Just back it up about 10 to 20 seconds, man. Okay, so let me explain something to you all. Now, that was Governor Ron DeSantis, okay? Governor Ron DeSantis, who was on Fox News, the town hall meeting they had on Fox News. So when President Joe Biden gave his address to a joint session of Congress on Wednesday, August 27th, then Senator Tim Scott, who's the Isaiah T. Montgomery of today. And if you saw my show Thursday, if you saw Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, June 11th, you know I talked about Isaiah T. Montgomery, because Isaiah T. Montgomery was the only African-American in the Mississippi state legislature, okay? And he voted along with the white supremacists he voted to approve the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890, which instituted the poll taxes and literacy test, discriminating against his own people. Isaiah T. Montgomery was the mayor. He founded the town of Bayou, Mississippi. Okay. He was the founder and mayor of Bayou, Mississippi. And he was in the state legislature. Isaiah T. Montgomery. Senator Tim Scott is the Isaiah T. Montgomery of today. Because Senator Tim Scott is going along with these voter suppression laws that he knows are targeting African Americans. And then on Sunday, May 2nd, Senator Tim Scott was on Face the Nation attacking the $4 billion in loan forgiveness for African-American farmers and farmers of color. That part of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan was put in there by Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia and Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. Senator Tim Scott, who has 6,000 African-American farmers in South Carolina, where he's the junior senator of, and he's not doing anything for them. He attacks this policy that will help African-American farmers. So we just heard Ron DeSantis, who, when he was on Fox News, the day after Biden gives his speech, that Thursday, Fox News has a town hall meeting asking, is America a racist country? Governor Ron DeSantis, who beat Andrew Gillum in the 2018 gubernatorial race. You see, this is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay. Governor Ron DeSantis says systemic racism doesn't exist. Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican, who's a big Trump supporter, said on Fox News, systemic racism doesn't exist. Now, you just heard him say, he just talked about judging people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. They misquote Dr. King. So they misquote Dr. King from the speech renamed I Have a Dream from 1963. Okay. August 28th, 1963. The original name of the speech was called Normalcy Never Again. Normalcy Never Again. The speech was renamed A Canceled Check. It's called I Have a Dream Later. That's not the original name of the speech. If you actually read the text of the speech, you can go to loc.gov, Library of Congress website. If you actually read the entire speech, Dr. King is talking about dismantling white supremacy and racism. He's talking about he's calling America out on their hypocrisy. He says that we were given a promissory note 100 years prior in 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation. And then when we take the promissory note to the bank, it's marked insufficient funds. He calls out police brutality. He calls out segregation, Jim Crow laws, poverty, all of this in the speech. The speech is not about a dream. When you read Clarence B. Jones' who was running Dr. King's speechwriters, Clarence B. Jones, wrote an article for the Washington Post dealing with the speech renamed I Have a Dream. Dealing with the speech renamed I Have a Dream. He says the phrase I have a dream didn't appear in the original drafts of the speech because the speech wasn't about a dream. So what people like Governor Ron DeSantis, who Andrew Gillum said at a gubernatorial debate, he said, I'm not saying Mr. DeSantis is a racist. I'm saying the racists believe Mr. DeSantis is a racist. What they do is they skip over Dr. King's critique of racism in America in the very same speech, and they go to black children and white children holding hands and the content of their character. But that's after you dismantle white supremacy that they don't want to acknowledge exists. This is why the correct history has to be taught. Because you can't have people ignorant of history who are empowered to write laws that impact everybody. So let's go back to that clip, Jalen.
Where children will be separated by their skin color and deemed permanently oppressors or oppressed in 2021.
On Thursday, the Florida Board of Education banned critical race theory in its schools.
I think it'll cause people to think of themselves more as a member of a particular race or based on skin color rather than based on the content of their character.
There's no national mandate saying this curriculum needs to be taught in public schools. But at least 5 Republican-led states have now officially banned the theory from public education. Last month, state AGs from 20 states told the education department they opposed the teaching.
What teachers have been doing is simply doing what they always do. They create magic in our classroom. They give our students the opportunity to understand the full breadth and depth of the American society. And that is about the inception of this country. That's about our Constitution. That's about slavery. That's about Jim Crow laws. It's about the beautiful inventions that we've had. And it spans across the diaspora. And it spans across any demographic kind of divide that we may have.
People on both sides are fired up.
It absolutely needs to be taught, okay? CRT needs to be taught to avoid biases, to not repeat history.
There are racists. There always has been. They should be condemned. But I don't believe that America is a racist country.
Now, some say that education has been impacted by the moment.
We're unfortunately seeing resistance to even broach the concept of what that means in our understanding of our history and our present.
Not a new concept, some 4 decades in the making. Now, some educators argue that the controversy is manufactured and not reflective of any wholesale changes across education. With
I'm Zachary Keish-Forrest. Thank you.
Okay, pause right there. All right, thanks, Jalen. Okay, so you heard the one guy who said there are racist people, but he doesn't think America is a racist country. All right, whether America is to say America is a racist country or not is really that's really ambiguous. That's really nebulous. What are you calling America? Are you calling the governmental institutions America? Are you calling the Constitution America? Are you saying the founding fathers? Are you saying the 330 million people who exist today? What are you calling America? When we look at critical race theory, so when you start trying to, you can't, first of all, let's do this. You have to define what racism is. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. This is what racism is. Racism is not on an individual basis. Racism is not liking people because of their race, not calling people racial epithets. That's bigotry. Racism is something different. Racism is a power structure. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race that comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, healthcare, marketing, etc. And they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is racism. Some people refer to that as systemic racism. But if you actually understand racism, racism is systemic by nature. It's not an individual to individual relationship. Racism is a group to group relationship. So when you want to boil it down to individuals, and you want to talk about there are individuals who are racist. This ain't about individuals. This is about a system of white supremacy and racism. This is the conversation that a lot of white people don't want to have. Not all white people. Many of them do. They want to have this conversation. Some get it, others don't. Now, some white people started learning more about it in summer 2020 with the protests taking place. The Black Lives Matter protest, George Floyd, all this stuff. Some white people started learning more about how their white privilege protects them. So when you try to boil this down to individuals, that means you don't even understand what racism is, because racism is a system, and it's a group, and racism is a group sport, it's a team sport. It's not on an individual basis. So if we look at this article here, this is from Black News Channel, and this gives you a basic understanding of critical race theory. They go on further in the article to talk about it. This is when former state representative Vernon Jones got his behind handed to him by Dr. Mark Lamont Hill on the Black News Channel. Because State Representative Vernon Jones, and you have a lot of these black conservatives. I'm neither Republican or Democrat, but I sure as hell ain't stupid. One, I'm a historian. Two, I study these policies. Okay, I study these policies and these bills and things like this. So State Representative Vernon Jones is running for governor of Georgia. Now, he used to be a Democrat. He switched to the Republican Party, and he's a big Trump supporter. Okay, already, he's brain damaged. He goes on, he says that if he becomes governor of Georgia, one of the first things he's going to do is sign an executive order banning critical race theory. But when he was asked numerous times by Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, explain to me what critical race theory is, Vernon Jones couldn't explain what critical race theory is. Most of these conservatives, Republicans, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, most of them who are attacking critical race theory can't tell you coherently what it is. So it just becomes a trick bag just to throw everything in it that they don't like about race and call it critical race theory. But critical race theory is a legal analysis on the premise that race is a social construct, not something that's biological, because the only race is the human race. You understand the evolution of the concept of race and humanity being stratified into races. And we see this evolve over the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. You have people like Dr. Carl von Linnaeus, who stratifies humanity into races. And then you have Dr. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach in 1779, who coins the term Caucasian. And he stratifies humanity into races as well. And they start associating characteristics, and oftentimes negative characteristics. They start associating this with race. It's not something scientific. Okay, it's not something scientific. All right, so you have to understand the stratification of humanity by races. In Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy, she talks about this. Okay, and we see this evolution in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. So critical race theory is not about making white people feel guilty. It's not about making white children feel guilty or separating people based upon oppressor and oppressed and all this stuff. And if you watch this clip here from abcnews.com, and we're going to post a clip here. At one of the meetings that they have where people are expressing whether they're for or against critical race theory, you hear this sister, her name is Keisha. She's up here. I don't know where she got her information about critical race theory, but it's wrong. She said it's going to separate children based upon oppressed and oppressor and all this nonsense. And she probably voted for Donald Trump. She's brain damaged. But critical race theory is a legal analysis on the premise that race is a social construct that is used to oppress people of color rather than a natural biological feature. Now, it goes on to say, if we scroll down in the article, critical race theory is okay. Critical race theorists hold that the law and legal institutions in the United States aren't inherently racist insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, especially African Americans. Now that's coming from Britannica.com. The people who attack critical race theory don't want to talk about how the laws and policies have been used to oppress African Americans and non-white people and maldistribute wealth, power, and resources into the hands of white people. They see, I've said before, a magician usually doesn't show you how he or she does the trick. A magician usually doesn't teach you how they do the trick, because if they teach you how to do the trick, then you're not going to pay to come see their show anymore. David Blaine, David Copperfield, whoever the top magicians are, there's a joke in there. I heard a joke about Magic City. In Atlanta, they call it Magic City because the women there make your money disappear. There is a joke there, but we ain't gonna we ain't gonna go there, right? Jalen's probably laughing right now. Jalen back at the studio, right? Okay, so I never been to Magic City. I just drove by there. I passed by there sometimes when I was in Atlanta. But anyway, so the magician never shows you how they do their magic trick. When you start teaching this history of how laws and policies have maldistribute wealth, power, and resources into the when you start teaching this history of what happened and how we got to this place, now you're exposing the magician's tricks. Now the magician can't do these tricks anymore. That's why they're so against critical race theory. This is not trying to make people feel guilty or anything like that. This is about dealing with the truth. And many of them can't handle the truth. Not all white people. I'm not saying all white people. Many of them in the Republican Party and even some in the Democratic Party. Maybe some independents. Many of them can't handle the truth. All right. So if we look at this, if we go back and look at this one here from Black News Channel, blacknewschannel.com. Republican-led states such as Tennessee and Iowa have proposed and passed bills that ban the teaching of critical race theory at public universities, with legislators saying it's un-American. Okay. So read this, check out this one here. And Dr. Mark Lamont Hill lit up Vernon Jones. All right. And Vernon Jones is running as a Republican to defeat Governor Brian Kemp. But he's not going to beat Stacey Abrams. If we look at this article that came out from this one here is from, let's go to this one here from NBC News. Florida Board of Education passes rule banning critical race theory in classrooms. And this just happened Thursday, June 10th. So you see these teachers here, okay? And you see this African-American teacher here as well. They're saying, allow teachers to teach the truth. Allow teachers to teach the truth. They were there during public comments on Florida's plans to ban teaching of critical race theory in public schools. This was in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. Now, the Florida State Board of Education unanimously voted to ban teaching ideas related to critical race theory on Thursday, June 10th, making it one of the largest public school systems to fall in line with conservative efforts across the country to regulate certain classroom instruction of American history. Okay, so the first thing I would ask them is, okay, now what are you teaching about the history of slavery in this country? What are you teaching about the history of slavery? What are you teaching about the people who were here before slavery? Because they were Native Americans weren't the only one here before slavery existed, before Europeans came. African people were here as well. That's what we discussed with Dr. David Imhotep. In this book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. African people have been here in this land going back at least 51,700 years ago. But I really want to know, what are you teaching about the history of slavery? And that's why this study from the Southern Poverty Law Center is so important. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. This is a 52-page study from the Southern Poverty Law Center that shows how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools all across the country, and how to, and it lays out numerous ways to more correctly teach that history. Okay. You can go to splcenter.org and download that study, Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries, who's associate professor of history at Ohio State University, and one of the nephews of one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, he is on the advisory board. He actually headed up the advisory board that put this together. And I've interviewed them here on this show before. So if this is something, this study right here is something that every school, I think, across the country should use. Because if they did, they would be teaching more accurate information about slavery. And it deals with how to teach this information age appropriately as well. Okay, which is very important also. So the Florida State Board of Education unanimously voted to ban teaching ideas related to critical race theory Thursday, June 10th, making it one of the largest public school systems to fall in line with conservative efforts across the country to regulate certain classroom instruction of American history. The rule says, quote, instruction on the required topics must be factual and objective and may not suppress or distort significant historical events. Well, that means you got to throw out a lot of textbooks you all are using already, because a lot of that stuff is wrong. That means you got to throw out a lot of textbooks you're already using, or distort significant. It may not suppress or distort significant historical events, such as the Holocaust, and may not define American history as something other than the creation of a new nation based largely on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. Based on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. Okay, well, let's look at the Declaration of Independence. I got it right here. Let's look at the Declaration of Independence. Hold on. Based upon principles in the Declaration of Independence. So you mean like we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, not women, but men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So let's look at this again. This is what they said in their law. This is what happens when you have dumbasses in state legislatures, okay? And you have an ignorant governor who supported this measure. Instruction on the required topics must be factual and objective and may not suppress or distort significant historical events. I wonder what they teach about Malcolm X in these schools. I'm just curious. I wonder what they teach about Malcolm X. Okay. I wonder what they teach about Dr. King, Medgar Evers, Marcus Garvey, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, Robert F. Williams and the Black Guard, Nat Turner, Haitian Revolution. I'm just curious. And may not suppress or distort significant historical events, such as the Holocaust, and may not define American history as something other than the creation of a new nation based largely on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. Now, the question I would ask them is, universal principles for who? Universal principles for who? Because at the time that the Declaration of Independence was drafted, June 28th, was drafted by a 5-man committee, June 28th, 1776, and then it's signed July 4th, 1776, by the first 4 of 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. Many of them are slave owners. So when you start talking about, now this is what you said. This ain't what I said. You said that they may not define American history as something other than the creation of a new nation based largely on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. Now, the question I would ask is, who the hell does this apply to? This is what you said. And the question I'm asking you is, when you say that when you say that we hold these truths to be self-evident, who is we? That all men are created equal, only men were here in this country, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, then why were Africans enslaved? Who they didn't have rights? So your argument is they didn't have rights, therefore you didn't take them away. They were just born with no rights. I understand born with some were born into chattel slavery, but who set up the laws to deprive them of their nationalities? Who set up the laws to deprive them of their humanity? Who set up the laws to deprive them of their rights? This is what you see. Now, you said it may not define American history as something other than the creation of a new nation based largely on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. Who do these universal principles apply to? That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's in the Declaration of Independence. Many of these people were slave owners, depriving African people of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is what's going on down in Florida. Florida has one of the biggest, one of the most racist histories in this country. Okay. In addition, the rule says teachers must, quote, serve as facilitators, so student discussion, and do not share their personal views or attempt to indoctrinate or persuade students to a particular point of view. Now, who's going to go through and audit the textbooks being used in Florida to make sure the textbooks are not indoctrinating students with a particular point of view? Because I can guarantee you they are. I can guarantee you they are. The board voted after hearing from Governor Ron DeSantis, who the racists believe is a racist, and over 30 speakers from both sides of the issue. Several people at the meeting chanted, "Allow teachers to teach the truth. Allow teachers to teach the truth," forcing a recess. The Florida Times Union of Jacksonville reported. Now, the move was a victory for Donald Trump supporter Governor Ron DeSantis, who has been a vocal critic of critical race theory in schools, but critical race theory is not being taught in schools. Most of these people who are critics probably can't even tell you what critical race theory is. He told board members, many of whom he appointed by video, he told them by video before the vote that students should be served with fact-based curricula by teachers who should, quote, not be trying to indoctrinate them with ideology, end quote. Who's going to audit the curriculum in Florida and the textbooks to make sure it's fact-based? Governor Ron DeSantis, who's up for re-election in 2022 and needs to be voted out of office, said, quote, I think it's going to cause a lot of divisions. I think it'll cause people to think of themselves more as a member of a particular race based on skin color rather than based on the content of their character and based on their hard work and what they're trying to accomplish in life. Now, this is the same guy who says systemic racism doesn't exist. He was on Fox News, Thursday, August 28th, when they had their little forum asking, is America a racist country? He's on Fox News saying systemic racism doesn't exist. We'll continue this on the other side of the break, and then we'll talk about the story dealing with the white farmers who sued the Biden administration because they're not included in the $4 billion in loan forgiveness for African-American farmers and farmers of color to deal with decades of racism and discrimination from the federal government. You got white farmers who got almost $26 billion in COVID relief aid from the Trump administration in 2020. and African-American farmers got 1/10 of 1%, $20.8 million. But now these white farmers are crying white tears, and they're suing, crying discrimination, saying that they're being discriminated against because they can get loan forgiveness as well. Okay, they weren't crying discrimination when they got almost $26 billion in 2020 from the Trump administration. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I knew they were going to play the disclaimer before. I knew they were going to play the disclaimer, but anyway, they do that for everybody. I think maybe they do it more for me, but I knew they were going to play the disclaimer. But anyway, it is what it is. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, June 13th, 2021. And we are live. The calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Right before the break, we were talking, in our first hour, basically, we were talking about what happened in Florida with the State Board of Education. And the Florida State Board of Education passed a rule on Thursday, June 10th, banning teaching critical race theory in classrooms or teaching elements of critical race theory in classrooms. We're going through breaking this down, showing the hypocrisy behind it. And then also we're going to get into the second topic in just a minute with what happened with African-American farmers and $4 billion in loan forgiveness being paused by a judge in Wisconsin because of a lawsuit by white farmers who are whining and crying and saying they're being discriminated against. Okay. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. So this helps support the African History Network, helps us keep broadcasting, stay on the air. We're here 6 days a week. Okay. And as many of you know, I've said it before, you know, I do the show for free. I don't get paid to be here. Okay. So this helps support us, keep doing the research, pay some of the bills. It helped me get to and from Atlanta. So I'm speaking there for the Juneteenth Festival, Friday, June 18th through Sunday, June 20th. $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, and then also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. So you see up on the screen, we have the real African History Network Cash App account. Our actual tag is $ TheAHNShow, SHOW. Shows my name there. Michael has my picture. These other two are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. Somebody set these up. They've been stealing money from us. I've already reported them to Cash App. So I'm trying to go through the process. All right. And then also visit JuneteenthATL.com, JuneteenthATL.com, and the information is there about the Juneteenth Festival, the 9th annual Juneteenth Festival at Centennial Park, Friday, June 18th through Sunday, June 20th. All right. I want to go back to this article here from NBCnews.com. This is dealing with what took place in Florida. Now, there have been about 20 states, and we're going to go to clip 2, Jalen, just a second here. There have been about 20 states to pass some type of bill, either banning critical race theory or dealing with what can be taught in school, et cetera. Okay. What can be taught dealing with slavery, all different types of things like this. And I'm telling you, when I see these attacks, personally, it hurts me. As a historian, this stuff hurts me. I understand how dangerous this is when you shut down and you try to control what's being taught. And you have people who are afraid of the truth being taught in schools. This is not about making white children feel guilty. This is not teaching white children, or your ancestors are oppressors, or your parents are oppressors, anything. This is not about that. This is about being able to have a more fair and just society, understand the history of how we got here, how to correct these structural inequities, understanding how laws and policies have created these structural inequities. This is what this is about. Okay. But what's happened is, and there was a, on All In with Chris Hayes on, let's see, what day was this? On All In with Chris Hayes, I think it was on the 10th. I think it was June 10th, June 9th. On June 9th, he did a segment dealing with critical race theory. And he put this graphic up. Now, this is a quote from a white male conservative named Christopher Rufo, R-U-F-O. And you all can Google this. He did this tweet March 15th, 2020. This is the whole plan of conservatives dealing with critical race theory. This is the whole plan. Okay. He lays it out. He says the goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. The goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. We have decodified the term and we will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are unpopular with Americans. Okay. Now, what he's saying is that they have distorted what critical race theory is. And what they're doing is they're just lumping everything they don't like about race and teaching about race and racism, systemic racism, slavery, 1619 Project. They're just lumping it all into a bag that they're labeling. They're putting this all into a bag that they're labeling critical race theory. Okay, this is what's taking place. Hold on, let me see something here. They're putting this all into a bag that they are labeling critical race theory. All right. So then all you have to do is say critical race theory, and you have all these people who are against it. But then when you ask them, explain to me what it is, none of them can tell you what it is because they don't know. Most of them haven't read any critical race theory scholars, Kimberly Crenshaw or anybody like that, Derek Bell. Most of them haven't read anything about that. Most of them, I guarantee you, are ignorant of history as well. Because if they actually understood history, they actually understood how laws and policies that now distribute wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans, they would understand that this is important. Okay, the history has to be taught. You may not necessarily take elements from critical race theory. Critical race theory is not taught in K through 12. It's taught in law schools and graduate schools. It's not taught in K through 12. Okay, it's a legal analysis. So research Christopher Rufo, R-U-F-O. Tell him I said hi. If we go back to this article here from NBC News, and once again, I want you to read all these articles I give you, okay? Proper documentation ends all conversation. You don't have to believe a word that I say. You go research this yourself. This is why I give you the sources. I want you to go read this stuff. Create tabs in your browsers, because I have thousands of articles archived. Create tabs in your browsers. I have a tab for critical race theory. I have one for ancient African history, things like that. I have thousands of articles archived. Okay, and go research this. You don't have to believe me. So Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican governor of Florida, said, quote, I think it's going to cause a lot of divisions. Critical race theory, even though it's not being taught in schools. He said, I think it'll cause people to think of themselves more as a member of a particular race based on skin color rather than based on the content of their character and based on their hard work and what they're trying to accomplish in life, end quote. But this is the same guy that says systemic racism doesn't exist. Now, several groups, including the Florida Education Association, a union that represents teachers across the state, opposed the rule change, saying it would do a greater disservice to students to cover up history. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to cover up history. I wonder, do they teach about axe handle Saturday in Florida? Do they teach that Jackie Robinson was ran out of Sanford, Florida? Okay, I'm just curious. How many people are familiar with Axe Handle Saturday? August 27, 1960. There was an article, we just talked about this a few days ago here on the show. Read this article here from Washington Post, okay? Axe handle Saturday, the Klan's vicious attack on black protesters in Florida 60 years ago. Are they going to teach about this? Or are they going to say this is critical race theory? If you teach about Axe handle Saturday that happened in Florida, okay? Are they saying, oh, you can't teach about this, okay? August 27th, 1960, a year of lunch counter sit-ins by civil rights activists. The opening salvo had been fired on February 1st, 1960, when 4 African-American college students sat down at a whites-only college lunch counter inside an F.W. Woolworth 5 and dime store in Greensboro, North Carolina. By spring of 1960, sit-in campaigns led by young African-Americans had been organized in cities all over the South, including Lexington, Kentucky, Little Rock, Baltimore, Richmond, and Nashville. Surprised white onlookers spit on them, spat and chewed and spewed racial epithets at demonstrators and sometimes physically attacked them. But as spring blossomed into summer, white supremacists farther south, having watched the protests achieve success elsewhere, switched to high alert. So when young African Americans began staging sit-ins at a whites-only Woolworth lunch counter in downtown Jacksonville, Florida, that summer the Ku Klux Klan organized. On the morning of what has become notoriously known as Axe Handle Saturday, more than 200 white men wielding wooden axes launched wooden axe handles, I should say. More than 200 white men wielding wooden axe handles launched a vicious attack on African Americans and passerbys. Before pulling the plug on an in-person convention in Jacksonville, Florida, Donald Trump was scheduled to speak there on the 60th anniversary of Axe Handle Saturday. That was last year, 2020, angering local activists. Okay, so the 1960 Ku Klux Klan attack in Florida signaled a sharp turn in the cascading sit-in movement from spontaneous acts of racism to coordinated white supremacist brutality. They changed from spontaneous acts of racism to coordinated white supremacist brutality, according to Stanford University history professor Claiborne Carson. Now, I hope they teach about this here, or are they going to say that's critical race theory? You teach about what the Klan did. See, now this is the real reason why some of them are afraid, because some of their great grandfathers were some of these white supremacists that have beaten African Americans, and if they go home, start asking questions, right? They're going to find out some things about their family that, you know, some people don't want them to know. So this is one of the real reasons. Some of those people are still alive. Some of those people's great grandchildren are going to be in school learning about what their relatives did. And read this article from Washington Post. Axe Handle Saturday, the Klan's vicious attack on black protesters in Florida 50 years ago. This is from August 27th, 2020. So are they going to teach about this? Or are they going to say that's critical race theory? But that happened in Florida. That's your history in Florida. You going to say that's critical race theory too? Don't teach that? All right. So let's go back to this one here from NBC News, and I want to go to this clip here. Let me flip back over to this. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a quick question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a quick question or comment. We're going to talk about the African-American farmers in just a minute, because all this is connected. All this is dealing with white supremacy and racism. Some people want to act like it doesn't exist because they benefit from it. That's what it is. The magician doesn't want you to know how they keep doing these magic tricks. Several groups, including the Florida Education Association, a union that represents teachers across the state, opposed the rule change, saying it would do a greater disservice to students to cover up history. Andrew Spar, the union president, the union's president, said in a statement, quote, "Students deserve the best education we can provide, and that means giving them a true picture of their world and our shared history as Americans. Hiding facts doesn't change them." What he's saying is hiding the facts don't change the facts. You're trying to distort the history and distort the facts because you don't like the history. Hiding the facts do not change the facts. He said if giving students a education is the goal, the rule could be amended to say in part, quote, "Instruction on the required topics must be factual and objective and may not suppress or distort significant historical events such as the Holocaust, slavery, the Civil War, Reconstruction, and Jim Crow," end quote, he said. A particular sore point is the use of the word indoctrinate in the rule. Indoctrinate in the rule, which the teachers union says presents an overly negative view of classroom instruction. The Florida school board chose to keep the word in the rule, the word indoctrinate. Florida's move was widely expected as a national debate intensifies about how race should be used as a lens, to, hold on, keeps jumping around. How race should be used as a lens in classrooms to examine the country's tumultuous history. Critical race theory is a concept that seeks to understand racism and inequality in the U.S. by exploring and exposing the ways it affects legal and social systems. See, this is what I'm saying. They don't want this to be exposed. They don't want you to let the rabbit out the bag. The magician doesn't want you to see how he keeps doing the magic tricks. They are pulling back the curtain on the wizard. You go back and watch The Wizard of Oz, okay? With Judy Garland, the original Wizard of Oz. You watch The Wiz too. Wiz is cool, but I'm talking about The Wizard of Oz. Let's go back to the original one. You see when they meet the wizard, you see this big ominous character with a deep voice, and they're using technology to make themselves seem bigger and stronger and smarter than he actually was. So Toto goes around to the side, pulls back the curtain, and exposes a dwarf manipulating technology to give the impression that he's much more powerful than he actually is. With critical race theory and actually understanding history, you're pulling the curtain back on the wizard. That's what they can't let happen. That's why they're fighting this so hard. Critical race theory is a concept that seeks to understand racism and inequality in the U.S. by exploring and exposing the wizard, or the grand wizard, and exposing the ways it affects legal and social systems. Critical race theory is not taught in Florida public schools or in any other public school system, but it has become a tremendous point of contention for conservative leaders because they don't want you to understand, they don't want to expose racism and white supremacy. That's what this is, because it's benefiting them. Okay, I want to go to clip 2 here. This is in this article here from NBC News. This is actually from NBC Now, explaining the controversy behind critical race theory. This is from June 11th, 2021. Let's go to this clip, Jalen. Oh, damn, we up against a break. Hold on. What we got to do with this clip on the other side of the break? All right. Hold on. Stand by. All right. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future of Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, June 13th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number. If you have a quick question or comment. Right before the break, we were talking about what took place in Florida on Thursday, June 10th, regarding the Florida State Board of Education passing a rule banning the teaching of critical race theory in Florida schools, K through 12, even though critical race theory is not being taught in Florida schools, K through 12. Okay. But this is part of this whole fear and part of this whole conservative campaign to attack critical race theory, the 1619 Project, different things like that. Okay. So I want to go to this clip here. This is from NBC News Now, and it's in the article. The clip is in the article that we've been talking about here from NBC News, and also there's an article from CNN that I showed you at the beginning of the show, explaining the controversy behind critical race theory. Let's go to this clip, Jalen.
Some Ohio lawmakers want to ban what is known as critical race theory.
Governor Kemp pushing back against teaching critical race theory in Georgia schools. CRT is not an honest dialogue.
Republican lawmakers and some concerned parents are waging war against critical race theory and its role in the classroom today. It's a 40-year-old academic framework based on the concept that racism impacts our legal and social systems. So is the outrage an overreaction, or is it justified?
I teach critical race theory throughout my class, or at least I bring the sensibilities.
Dr. LaToya Baldwin-Clark teaches law at UCLA's Critical Race Studies program. She says these are some of the basic themes of critical race theory. Race is not real, but racism is. Racism is ordinary and baked into our institutions and systems. Not all groups experience racism the same way. Whiteness comes with material and psychological benefits. But the uproar over CRT these days isn't really directed at college-level professors like Dr. Baldwin-Clark necessarily. It's aimed at K-12 classrooms. After the summer of social unrest, CRT ideas are appearing in grade school lesson plans. That's sparking backlash from conservatives and some liberals who claim this actually creates more division among younger students.
What we see now, though, is kind of a bastardization of critical race theory.
Dr. Eric Smith is an associate professor of rhetoric at York College of Pennsylvania. He's been speaking out against CRT.
I think it's a travesty to tell kids especially, right, that because of this systemic racism, you're going to always have it hard.
But unlike other critics, Dr. Smith doesn't support invoking CRT as a way to censor honest conversations about race.
Unfortunately, there are people on the right with their agendas and see this as an opportunity to squelch discussion about race, period. And that's not good.
It's past time for America to discard the left-wing myth of systemic racism.
From Texas to Ohio, Republican lawmakers in at least 6 states are turning their animus into action, introducing measures that limit how schools can teach historical truths about racism. A lot of these laws don't explicitly mention critical race theory, but instead use broad language to define what is and isn't acceptable. Take Kentucky, for example. Republican State Representative Joseph Fisher recently pre-filed a bill that would ban concepts teaching that an individual is, quote, inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. Another line says you can't refer to the United States as, quote, fundamentally or irredeemably racist or sexist. In Oklahoma, Governor Kevin Stitt signed a bill into law that bans lessons, including the concept that one should feel discomfort, guilt, or stress on account of their race or sex.
The discourse is critical race theory teaches our children to think that white people are evil. And that's not the case. We are not teaching white children that they are oppressors or that they are bad or that they should feel guilty. What we are doing is we are actually making our pedagogy more critical so that all of our children understand how we got to where we are today.
Republicans are also leading a movement on the national front, arguing the mere mention of systemic racism is racist. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton's Combating Racist Training in the Military Act already has the support of 30 GOP representatives. The Stop CRT Act would essentially codify former President Donald Trump's executive order banning diversity and racial equity training for federal employees.
I don't believe in banning CRT. I think that's the wrong move. I think what we need to ban is saying that CRT is the end-all, be-all truth. It should be a lens through which we can see the world, right? It shouldn't be the lens.
Some educators and Democrats are concerned these laws might whitewash history and handicap teachers' ability to effectively teach slavery or Jim Crow. During a recent press conference in Kentucky, Democratic Governor Andy Beshear expressed concern about the bill proposed in his state.
I think once you start legislating what can and can't be taught in schools, especially in the framework of politics, it gets really dangerous.
And the Oklahoma City Board of Education unanimously denounced the bill just passed in their state, with one board member describing it as an insult.
I honestly don't see the laws themselves being particularly effective.
These laws may not have teeth in the classroom, but they could deliver political gains at the ballot box. Tweets like this one from Christopher Rufo, one of the right's most outspoken critics of CRT, suggest a broad and somewhat confusing definition of the concept is exactly the point, especially as many conservatives look to rally voters around culture wars like this one ahead of next year's midterms.
Hey, pause it right there. I think that's the end of the clip anyway, Jalen. Isn't that the end of the clip? I think. Okay, good. All right. So they just mentioned Christopher Rufo. This is the tweet that I talked about earlier in the show from conservative Christopher Rufo. Okay. This is obfuscating, distorting, confusing what critical race theory is, and just throwing everything that you don't like about the talk about race and systemic racism and slavery in 1619 Project, put it all into one category called critical race theory. He said, this is his tweet from March 15th, 2021. He said, the goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. Immediately think critical race theory. We have decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are unpopular with Americans. So they're going to relabel critical race theory to be what it's not, but this is what they want to relabel it as to create this taint around it and just throw all these things they don't like dealing with the conversation about race, throw this into the bag of critical race theory so they can attack it and shut it down. It's like creating a straw man argument. It's like creating a straw man argument. It's like if you have a politician who says, I never said, such and such, right? Well, nobody said you said that. It's like, I'm trying to think of a good example. It's, if you have, I was thinking of McMaster's, used to be in the Trump administration, but it's like saying, I never said this person did such and such, and you hold a press conference and you say, I never said that person said such and such. Well, nobody said you did. You creating a straw man argument to divert attention from what it was you did say or what you did do so that people can now run headlines and say, he said he did not do this. Well, nobody said you did it. You're creating a straw man argument to divert attention from what the real issue is. All right. So read the rest of this article here from NBC News. Florida Board of Education passes rule banning critical race theory in schools. Okay, read the rest of this article. And as the article goes on to say, this is why it's important to read like the full article, because I see people, they read like the headlines and start commenting on social media or doing videos, and they just read the headlines. When you scroll down and read this article, it says critical race theory is not taught in Florida public schools or in any other public school system, but it has become a tremendous point of contention for conservative leaders. At least 16 states are considering or have enacted bills that would limit how schools frame American history. See, they're afraid of the truth. That's what this is. All right, so read that article. Now, I want to go quickly to this next topic. I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, and we dealt with, now, we've been talking about African-American farmers, the plight of African-American farmers. We've been talking about the $4 billion in loan forgiveness that's in the American Rescue Plan, okay? And that's for African-American farmers and farmers of color. It's African-Americans that fought for that. African-American farmers. The reason why that portion is in the American Rescue Plan, the reason why it's in there in the first place is because of Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator Cory Booker, okay, trying to help African-American farmers. So you had this ruling that came down in Wisconsin from a judge in Wisconsin on Thursday, June 10th. And a judge has put a stop or a pause on the program, on the debt relief program, because white farmers have sued and they said that they're being discriminated against. It's unfair. It's reverse discrimination. It said they said their constitutional rights are being violated. Okay. Judge halts billions in debt relief. And I'm looking at this one here from Washington Post. Judge halts billions in debt relief for farmers of color as conservative group for white farmers sue. Okay. So we talked about this on we're going to go to clip clip 3, Jalen. We talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and Roland interviewed John Wesley Boyd Jr. of the Black Farmers Union to discuss this. Then he went to his panel, and I was on his panel. Let's go to this clip, Jalen.
And again, just so how we always are trying to connect the dots on this show, the whole issue of what's happening with black farmers. The money that was put in the bill that was recently passed to correct what took place with black farmers, $5 billion going to black farmers and other disadvantaged black farmers. Remember, we had the head of agriculture right here on the show discussing that, saying they were about to start sending that money out. What then happened? White farmers, oh my God, this is against us. This is discrimination against us. And then you have black people. Yes, then you have black people like Senator Tim Scott, who goes on Face the Nation and is saying the exact same thing these white farmers are saying. Oh, this is reverse racism. Okay, but I don't recall Senator Tim Scott saying a damn thing about black farmers and the little money they got out of the $25 billion that sent out, where the white farmers got all of that money. Okay, this is a loan forgiveness program. Our farmers of color. U.S. District Judge William Griesbach out of Wisconsin has temporarily suspended the program due to the lawsuit alleging it discriminates against white farmers. Now, it will pay up to 120% of direct or guaranteed farm loan balances for Black, American Indian, Hispanic, Asian American, or Pacific Islander farmers as part of the COVID-19 pandemic relief plan. Again, for all of y'all people out there who said ain't nothing happened with black people, no, this is not a black-specific program, but guess what? If you look at those numbers, you're likely going to have black farmers who are going to get more of the $5 billion than all the other groups out there. Okay? So just for y'all folks who keep saying there's nothing that's been done for black people. Joining us right now is John Boyd, founder and president of the National Black Farmers Association. John, glad to have you back on the show. We've talked about this here. This is no shock that they went to a federal judge in Wisconsin, where a lot of these white folks are, to get them to rule. And while I'm talking about connecting the dots, whoever you vote for, the president gets to nominate federal judges. The Senate gets to confirm federal judges. And so those 100 federal judges Mitch McConnell held up under Obama, that Trump was able to appoint, that's what you're dealing with here. And so there's a direct correlation to public policy passed by policymakers that impact black people that federal judges can either affirm or deny.
That's correct. And well, you know, it's a national disgrace that here we for 30 years, and the last time I was on your show, I was urging Secretary Vilsack to get the payments out to the farmers as quickly as possible. And if he had got the money to us, we wouldn't be caught in this trick bag here, so to speak. But here you have white farmers who have filed in, so far, 6 different federal courthouses around the country, Texas and Wisconsin and all of these other states around the country. And we'll probably wind up in the Supreme Court, you know, trying to put all these cases together. The National Black Farmers Association has already filed an amicus brief, you know, opposing all of this, you know, rhetoric. And here you have, just like you described, over one of these Republican judges who says it's going to be some sort of harm to white folks if you pay black people. Anytime in this country you put money, black people in the same sentence in the federal government, everybody goes crazy. This was only a small tad bit of what we had in the whole book of bill. So we broke that off thinking we could, you know, get it through without a whole lot of pushback. And so far we've had banks that came out against us. We talked about that last time. And now you have all of these lawsuits around the country from primarily, you know, white farmers who don't want to see black and other farmers of color get a dime in this country. And you know, when did we say enough is enough? And I was listening to you on your commentary. You've done a great job. Black America, wake up and look at this. You know, here you have a targeted group of people who've been discriminated against by the federal government. We lost millions of acres of land. It's been documented, and we didn't get injunctive relief in either of the 2 lawsuits. Injunctive relief being land and inventory and or debt relief that we've been asking Congress for. This is not a new program for white farmers that excludes white farmers. White farmers have been getting the debt relief the whole time, and rolling since 1995, they've got $500 billion worth of cheap told out to white farmers, 99% to white farmers. Under the Trump administration alone, $30 billion that went out to white farmers. So how many times they want to collect and how many times they want to get all of the money all of the time?
They want, it was $1. They want.
Pause it right there, Jay. Pause it right there. Just back it up about 20, 30 seconds. Okay, so we've been covering all this on this show. That's John Boyd Jr., president of the Black Farmers Union. Okay. If you look at this article here from March 25th, 2021, from the Washington Post. The Washington Post interviewed the new Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, who was the Secretary of Agriculture under the Obama administration. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says only 0.1% of Trump administration's COVID-19 farm relief went to black farmers. Only 0.1%. Okay. If you read this article here, it says of those who identified their race or ethnicity, black farmers received only $20.8 million. Okay, $20.8 million with an M dollars of nearly $26 billion in 2 rounds of payments under the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program announced by the Trump administration last April 2020. White farmers got almost $26 billion, but they weren't crying discrimination then. Okay. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack said, quote, we saw 99% of the money going to white farmers and 1% going to socially disadvantaged farmers. And if you break that down to how much went to black farmers, it's 0.1%, is 1/10 of 1%. He said, look at it another way. The top 10% of farmers in the country receive 60% of the value of the COVID payments. And the bottom 10% receive 0.26%, about a quarter of 1%. Okay. Now, 3.4 million farmers in the U.S., Only 45,000 African-American farmers. We had about 1 million African-American farmers in 1920. Today we got 45,000. African-American farmers have lost 92% of their land, 12 million acres of land over the past 100 years, largely due to discrimination, racism, and policies coming from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the federal government. All right, let's go back to this clip, Jalen.
Since 1995, they've got $500 billion worth of cheap told out to white farmers, 99% to white farmers. Under the Trump administration alone, $30 billion that went out to white farmers. So how many times they want to collect and how many times they want to get all of the money all of the time? Or,
yeah, they want, it was $1. They mad you got a penny. Oh no, they want that penny too. But also I need you to respond, John, to these ignorant black people who I see commenting who go, well, this is just a small pittance. This really is nothing. Right. Tell that to one of the black farmers. This is nothing.
Who waiting? We have farmers who call here, Roland, every single day at the National Black Farmers Association. Our brother Book, when are we going to get this debt relief? We have black farmers who are waiting on the brink of farm foreclosure. That means we lose more land, we lose more black farmers if we don't get these payments and relief out to black farmers. And as I talked about earlier about the conversations with Secretary Vilsack, you have to move swift with stuff like this and giving these people all this time to come out against the measure. And if they had told the money out the way that they did white farmers immediately after the bill passes, the monies are deposited into their checking accounts or whatever have you there, the same swift action should have been done in this particular law. It's no longer a bill, people. It's a law. And we haven't received the monies.
And the thing is, when I hear these nutcases go, well, the black farmers need reparations. Well, okay, please explain to me that when that's going to pass. Hell, a study can't even get passed. The reality is, this got passed.
Mm-hmm.
Got passed.
It got passed, Roland. And you know how long I was talking to you about debt relief, Roland, on your television show 10, 12 years ago. And this has been going on for 30 years. And it just passed, people. So all of these years of struggle, we get it. And now we have, like you say, black people who are lost, are lost, bald, and high reads that don't understand history. And for people who don't understand history, we take this a quick second and tell them slavery was wrong and held on American soil. Sharecropping was wrong and held on American soil. Jim Crow laws that took millions of acres away from black farmers was wrong. And every time they come out saying these type of statements, they always leave the fact of what history did to black farmers and in this case, black people in this country.
So here's what these white farmers are banking on. So everybody needs to understand. What they're now banking on is federal judge puts a stop to it. It gets appealed. It now goes to the next level. These white farmers want this to go all the way to the Supreme Court. So a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, okay, which is anchored by that clueless Clarence Thomas, that they will declare this to be unconstitutional. So black farmers aren't able to get this money. That's what these white farmers are trying to do.
Well, that's what they're doing right now because they're delaying the payments to black farmers. And right now, Roland, probably as we speak, we're probably looking at a 2-year court battle, to say the least, because I'm going to fight them all the way to the Supreme Court. And, we have to win the public support here. We need the support, especially in this case of black America, to wake up and start talking about this travesty. Here we have a law in place and we have white farmers and, like you said, some naive brothers out there on the wrong side of the issue who are saying they don't want us to receive the money, that it's going to harm them if we compensate black farmers and Hispanic farmers and Native American farmers, all of the people who have been harmed, by this government. Something is terribly wrong with that picture.
It is. And so, look, we've been right there with you, National Black Farmers. A whole lot of people out here running their mouths who have not been talking about this issue. Unfortunately, it's a lot of mainstream networks who have not been calling you, having you on a regular basis. And so,
And they really do because, this is a big issue here. You got land and money in the same sentence, and for black people, that's a whole lot. And we have to get on top of this, and we have to stop the land loss. And the only way to do that is to get money in the hands of needy black farmers and other farmers of color in this country.
Well, and what people also don't realize is that you're seeing a renewed focus also among younger African Americans who are now looking at farming. As a sister I know, Rachel Ponder, she's an activist out of Georgia, and she's actually going through classes now to become a black farmer. And so you see African Americans who are creating urban farms, who are creating this to deal with food deserts. And so people need to understand that there are black people in rural America who this impacts. We're talking about Virginia, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, Florida. But it's also, these things impact what's happening in inner cities where African Americans are trying to become more self-reliant, even with urban farms.
And as we go, Roland, we have a scholarship program we just announced, probably about $4 million scholarship, a full ride for 4 years. And we need young blacks to apply for this scholarship. So they can look at that on the National Black Farmers Association.org or blackfarmers.org. Go out and apply. We got to get young blacks, just like you said, back into farming. And this is the best way to do it by educating them.
And we'll be sure to get that out. I'll push that on social media as well because, the opportunities are there. My brother actually was a business major at Texas A&M, then ended up actually graduating with an agricultural economics degree because there were all of these companies were looking to hire black folks in agriculture. And again, we're sitting here thinking, well, agriculture means just a farm, not realizing these major companies. DuPont, he actually got hired by DuPont out of college, and so that's one of the areas. But again, it's redefining for people when they hear agriculture, not thinking it's just completely, oh my goodness, you're going to be on a tractor. No, agriculture is the second largest budget in the federal government.
Absolutely. Well, you're hitting all the nails with the hammer. And we got to be a part of that. And we have to get more blacks into agribusiness in this country. And, for the people who guide the food, guide the country people. We got to get a foothold and start to control some of the food that's produced in this country so we can start directing the way that things are run in this country.
All right, then. John Boyd, we still appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, sir. I want to bring our panel back in. When I was just talking about, again, redefining what these things means. I sort of think about, Michael, I remember when I was at a sister who was graduating from Texas A&M with a degree in marketing. And I was telling her to apply for a job at the newspaper where I worked. She was like, newspaper? I said, sister, PepsiCo and Coke are not the only people who hire folks for marketing jobs. Right. I said, every major company has marketing departments. Mm-hmm. And part of the problem for a lot of us, again, many black people have been raised where we're just sort of very finite in our thinking in terms of what the opportunities are. And so there was a professor, Dr. Alvin Lark, who was in the agriculture department at Texas A&M, who was the one to my brother. No, you didn't want to switch your major. He was trying to get more African Americans to switch. See, many of them were business majors. Well, a lot of people were then leaving the business department, and he was trying to say, look, it's the same thing. Forget what that title is on your degree. What are the jobs that are there when you're able to come out of college? And that's the thing, the opportunities that are made available.
Yeah, that's true. I remember, my degree's in business administration with a major in marketing. And, I remember in the business school, a lot of us are geared towards corporations or those in accounting. At the time, it was the big six accounting firms. They're geared toward the big six accounting firms. Those in marketing were geared towards some of the big ad agencies, things like this. And then you learn about the reality of racism out in the real world. And that's when I learned how racist marketing really was and advertising agencies really were, things like this. But yeah, there's a resurgence when it comes to urban farms. Okay, we see that here in Detroit, brothers like Malika Kinney and others, D-Town urban farms. And this bill right here, I want people to really, really understand. I don't think people understand that this $4 billion in loan forgiveness, this is in the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. No Republicans voted for this bill in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate. Zero. No Republicans. There's over 200 Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives. They voted no. The 50 Republicans in the Senate voted no on the bill. The only reason why you have this bill is because African Americans, Latinos, and others went out and voted in 2020, and then you had John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock that went in Georgia. Okay, and this is the only reason why you have this bill, and this passed during the budget reconciliation process. So it was like 51-50. That's the only reason why you have this, and it was Senator Cory Booker and Senator Raphael Warnock who put this portion into the bill for black farmers. Now, lastly, you had Tom Vilsack on the show, and Tom Vilsack did an interview with the Washington Post March 25th. He talked about how under the Trump administration in 2020, white farmers got almost $26 billion. Almost $26 billion. African American farmers got 0.1%. They got 20.8 million out of 26 billion. None of these white farmers were talking about discrimination when that happened. Senator Lindsey Graham wasn't talking about discrimination against black farmers because they only got 0.1%. Senator Tim Scott, who is really the Isaiah T. Montgomery of the Republican Party, and Isaiah T. Montgomery, he voted along in the 1890 Mississippi. He voted along with the new Mississippi Constitution that was discriminating against black people. That's Senator Tim Scott, the new Isaiah T. Montgomery. So this is an example of how elections have consequences, brother. All right, pause right there, Jalen. Pause right there. Okay, and read the article that I talked about at the beginning of the show, and I did a whole show on this Thursday, June 10th, from the Washington Post, the Mississippi Plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. Quote, we came here to exclude the Negro, end quote. And this is what's being implemented right now with almost 400 voter restriction bills in 48 state legislatures being pushed by Republicans. They're using the same playbook. And Isaiah T. Montgomery, who was in the state legislature in Mississippi, African-American, founder of Bayou, Mississippi, mayor of Bayou, Mississippi, he voted for the Mississippi State Constitution that instituted poll taxes and literacy tests. Read this article here. Isaiah T. Montgomery. This is before Clarence Thomas. You have Isaiah T. Montgomery. All right. That was from Roland Martin Unfiltered, Friday, June 11th. We'll post a link here. Follow Roland on Twitter, Roland S. Martin, and on, YouTube, Roland S. Martin, and on Facebook, Roland Martin on Facebook. You can watch the show there. I'm on every Friday as a panelist. Lastly, we have time here, but those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to continue this discussion. We're going to talk about Medgar Evers next. He was assassinated June 12th, 1963. I'll be in Atlanta Friday, June 18th through Sunday, June 20th for the Juneteenth festival there at Olympic Centennial Park. Visit JuneteenthATL.com for more information. You can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN Show. And this helps us keep broadcasting 6 days a week. This helped me get to and from Atlanta because I got to cover expenses for this trip to Atlanta and back. I'll have a vendor booth there as well. You can come check me out there. I'll be there all 3 days. I'm speaking Saturday and Sunday, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the amphitheater at the Centennial Olympic Park. You can still register for the online course I teach on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. We had a great class this past Saturday. Our guest speaker was Dr. David Imhotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. So we'll post a link here as soon as you register. It's a 10-week online course. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just had with Dr. David Imhotep. His new book will be out in about 2 or 3 weeks. The First Americans Were Africans Revisited. And we dealt with ancient African history. We dealt with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. But he talked about a new discovery in Central America that pushes an African presence in Mexico going back about 250,000 years ago. All right. So those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you on Monday. Peace. All right. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. Stand by. Let me disconnect this call. All right, let's keep going. How's everybody doing? I want to get to this segment here dealing with Medgar Evers, who went longer than I thought. I wanted to in the other segment. With Juneteenth, we'll talk about Juneteenth on Monday's show. I may be able to squeeze a little bit about Juneteenth in here, but the information dealing with critical race theory is really important. That ties into history. The information dealing with what's taking place with African American farmers and how this is being attacked. So everybody's saying we want reparations, we want reparations. That's a legislative process. Okay. Most people that say we want reparations can't tell you realistically, logically, how to actually get it. That's a legislative process. It takes 218 votes to get any bill passed in the House of Representatives. All right. If you go to govtrack.us or congress.gov and look and see how much support HR 40 has, there are about 188, between 183 to 188 members of Congress that have signed on to support HR 40, to actually vote for it. None of them are Republicans. None of them are Republicans. Republicans don't support reparations, including the two black ones in the House of Representatives, Burgess Owens of Utah and the other dumbass, Bradford, the one that's crying, Bronsford, the one that's crying because the Congressional Black Caucus won't accept him as a member. Well, you voted not to certify the December 14th. You voted not to certify the votes for the presidential election that were certified by 50 state legislatures. You were one of the 147 traitors that voted to overturn the election results, not to certify the election results. So of course they're not going to accept you. So I want to go to this clip. So it takes 218 votes. You got about 188. And that's and you don't have enough votes now to pass HR 40. They're still building support. It just passed out of the House Judiciary Committee a few weeks ago. And that's the first time in 32 years that HR 40 has passed out of the House Judiciary Committee. You have no Republicans in the U.S. Senate that support HR 40. Not even Tim Scott, the only black Republican in the U.S. Senate. You don't have enough Democrats to get it passed. Now, you need 60 votes in the Senate. If all 50 Democrats in the Senate vote for HR 40, that means you need 10 Republicans that are going to vote for it. Who are the 10 Republicans that are going to vote for HR 40? They wouldn't even vote for the American Rescue Plan. They help white Republicans that put them in office. They wouldn't even vote for that. That's why a lot of this is rhetoric. When you go through and actually do a systems analysis and analyzing, now explain to me how you get what it is you say you want. Most of them can't even tell you this. They can't even name me 10 Republicans in the Senate that will vote for reparations. They wouldn't even vote for the American Rescue Plan. So what we have to understand is that we have to, each election cycle, we have to build upon what we did the previous election cycle. We have to vote more people out of office that keep voting against bills that we're for, and vote more people into office that support and will vote for bills that we're for. It's a numbers game. People don't understand the math. It's a numbers game. You need 218 votes, a simple majority in the House of Representatives to get any bill passed. If you can't get a bill passed to study reparations, explain to me how you get one passed to pay reparations. The $4 billion in loan forgiveness is being attacked for African-American farmers and Hispanic farmers and Asian farmers. A lot of that is going to help African-American farmers. There have been 17,000 farmers that have signed on to get this loan forgiveness. So what this means is, if you had a loan out through like the federal government or something like that, they're going to wipe out this debt. That's going to help thousands of African-American farmers who are drowning. John Boyd just talked about this. So if a loan forgiveness program is being attacked like this by conservatives, what do you think is going to happen when you start talking about actually paying reparations? Or whatever form reparations is going to be in that you can actually get past. This is why I've said before, we got to think this whole thing through, and you got to structure your reparations argument to withstand a legal challenge, because this is going to be challenged in court. I knew this was going to be challenged in court. I already knew this. I knew this was going to be challenged in court. And what it seems like a lot of people don't understand is that the judicial branch of government is a co-equal branch of government. You have the legislative branch, the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. You have the executive branch, the president, the White House. Then the legislative, then the judicial branch, the courts. The courts are a co-equal branch of government. The courts can strike down a law and rule that a law is unconstitutional, therefore illegal, or the courts can uphold a law and rule that a law is constitutional, therefore illegal, therefore legal. The other thing is executive orders from a president can be challenged in court and can be overturned in court. So that's why any reparations argument has to be legally sound, because it's going to be challenged. White conservatives are going to challenge this. And what you don't want to happen is that it gets struck down in court. This is why I said one of the two main arguments for reparations, legal arguments. One, based upon Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution, because the U.S. Congress outlawed the international transatlantic slave trade March 2nd, 1807. And that's part of the U.S. Constitution. They put a 20-year clause in the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1, that the earliest that the international transatlantic slave trade could be banned would be 1808. And that means bringing Africans into this country to enslave them. The international transatlantic slave trade. U.S. Congress passed a law March 2nd, 1807 to ban the international transatlantic slave trade. It went into effect January 1st, 1808, which means all of those Africans that were brought to this country from January 1st, 1808 up until June of 1860, when the Clotilda came into Alabama, the last known slave ship, all of that was illegal based upon federal law. There are court cases of white men who got caught trafficking, bringing Africans into this country, and they were prosecuted. It was illegal based upon federal law. So right there is a foundation for a legal argument for reparations, because you're violating federal law. And there are court cases to back this up. One of the most powerful court cases is the Amistad slave ship case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court. If you go to LOC.gov, Library of Congress website, if you go to LOC.gov and research the Amistad, they have some of the original court documents there. When you research the Amistad case at LOC.gov, the Amistad mutiny, they tell you that it was illegal for those Africans to be captured in the first place, because they say it violated existing treaties at the time between the various nations. Okay, it violated existing treaties at the time. LOC.gov is what I want. Or is that let me see. Archive. Let me see. Is it archives? No, it's archives.gov. This one, you can go to LLC.gov, but I want, what's that? Archives.gov, National Archives on the Amistad slave ship. This is a U.S. Supreme Court case. This is dealing with law. This is a foundation for a legal argument for reparations. But you got to understand law to understand this. If you go here, archives.gov, National Archives, the Amistad case. I've done an entire presentation dealing with this. In February 1839, Portuguese slave hunters abducted a large group of Africans from Sierra Leone and shipped them to Havana, Cuba, a center for the slave trade. This abduction, read this, this abduction violated all of the treaties then in existence. Treaties are done between nations. This abduction of these Africans was illegal from the start, because it violated all of the existing treaties between these different nations. Two Spanish plantation owners, Pedro Montez and Jose Ruiz, purchased 53 Africans and put them aboard the Cuban schooner called the Amistad to ship them to a Caribbean plantation. On July 8th, 1839, the Africans seized the ship, killed the captain and the cook, and ordered Montez and Ruiz to sail to Africa. Okay, now they have some of the original court documents here. If you go research this case goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, and John Quincy Adams, former president, is a defense attorney for them. Okay, John Quincy Adams, son of John Adams. When you look at make a long story short here, you read all this yourself. Make a long story short. The Supreme Court ruled on behalf of the Africans on the ship. So if you saw the movie Amistad, okay, and there's an excellent book about the movie. This book here, Mutiny on the Amistad by Howard Jones. Mutiny on the Amistad by Howard Jones, the events that inspired the major motion picture. Okay. This is one of the best books dealing with the history of the Amistad mutiny and the court case. What happened to those Africans? All right. So, let me back up here. All right. When you look at this case here, you're going to see that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that it was illegal for those Africans to be captured in the first place because it violated existing treaties. And then the Supreme Court decided in favor of the Africans. So in the movie Amistad, we see Joseph Senku, okay, and Damon Hansu, Joseph Senku, and you see him say, give us free, things like that. All right. And when I ask people, okay, what happened to those Africans on the Amistad slave ship? All right. They say, they were set free. Why were they set free? Okay, hold on. What is this doing? Why were they set free? They won their case in the U.S. Supreme Court because it was illegal for them to be captured in the first place. All right, let me scroll down here. But this is dealing with law. So when we talk about reparations, repairing the damage, reparations, number one, we need a comprehensive reparations plan. Just cutting the check ain't gonna do it. Okay, because you're dealing with the people that largely been taught to hate themselves, been stripped of their history, culture, language, spiritual systems, family ties, all that stuff. So every year we go to conferences and we talk about how African Americans spend 97% of their dollars with people that don't look like us. If reparations is just in the form of cash payments, what do you think we're going to do with the money? If we all got $500,000 a day, white people will have it all back by this time next week. So repairing the damage has to be comprehensive. Cash payments can be part of an overall reparations package. Ain't no in the hell reparations to be 100% in the form of cash payments. White people are going to have this all back this time next week. The only thing you would have done is stimulated their economy, and the laws and policies will still be in place that maldistributed the wealth, power, and resources in the first place and created the structural inequities that caused the harm. The laws and policies will still be in place. But the Supreme Court decided in favor of the Africans of the Amistad slave ship, stating they were free individuals, kidnapped and transported illegally. They had never been slaves. This is what the U.S. Supreme Court ruled. They had never been slaves. Senior Justice Joseph Story wrote and read the decision. Quote, it was the ultimate right of all human beings in extreme cases to resist oppression and to apply force against a ruinous injustice, end quote. The opinion asserted that the Africans' right to resist, quote unquote, unlawful slavery. So they said the Africans had a right to take up arms on that slave ship and fight for their freedom, because that's what they did. All right. So read this. This deals with the Amistad slave ship case. This is a U.S. Supreme Court case of 1841. This is at archives.gov, the National Archives, archives.gov. Okay. And then also the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866, that lays a legal foundation for slavery as well, because those are laws still on the books right now. And those Africans who were enslaved by the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians, they got some type of reparations. And those are laws that are still on the books right now. They got some type of reparations. All right. So I want to go to this clip here. This is dealing with Medgar Evers. So Medgar Evers was assassinated June 12th, 1963. And he was assassinated by Byron Della Beckwith, okay, who was a member of the White Citizens Council there in Mississippi. And oftentimes when we talk about civil rights leaders, Medgar Evers gets left out of the conversation for some reason. Okay. Now, maybe he was, I don't know. Now, he was only 37 when he was assassinated.